So first off, while we have been speaking about this before a lot of times, and you were always a bit more on the pro side, and I was on the con side, I haven't
Mhm.
actually taken the time to properly study it from the perspective of actually going in a bit more and researching what everything was about. So I was like,
Right.
okay, so I had a vague idea what Lightning Network was supposed to do, but I wasn't 100% clear on it. And I did like a couple of hours of due diligence on it. And yeah, and same thing with Taproot. And then a bit I explored the use case with Square and what their plan is. So I have some views on that. One sec. Okay, so I'll start with Lightning Network. So the thing with Lightning Network is probably everybody heard that it's supposed to make Bitcoin faster. The question is how? Like in the whole context of cryptocurrencies, you have a block size, you have confirmations that need to be made, you have miners that do complex mathematical operations. So in the whole scheme of things, the question is, okay, how do you speed things up? Like Vitalik was also talking about this on the Lex Friedman podcast, and he was talking about what Ethereum solutions were. And surprise, surprise, Bitcoin solutions, like in this case, Lightning Network, are similar, but they're different in the long term. So Vitalik was saying that layer two solutions, and for those people who don't know what layer two solutions mean is basically having solutions on top of the existing chain basically to augment it rather than trying to implement everything into the original chain. So basically, and what Lightning Network is, it's a layer two solution. So basically, it's going to be an external solution to the original Bitcoin chain, in which you can have like transactions between entities without always confirming the transaction on the blockchain, but rather keeping a channel open between entities. And one of the examples I've seen was, for example, buying coffee, because that's a daily reoccurring payment. You have a channel with your coffee shop, and basically you go to your coffee shop, you spend whatever $2 or $3 on it, and instead of confirming that transaction on the blockchain on the spot, you basically share a wallet with them, which is a multi-signature wallet, meaning that you can both access it and it's not like you both have control over it, but you can both access it. And
Right.
how the thing works is, I say I'm putting zero point 0.5 Bitcoin there, right, for me to buy coffee, and each day the coffee shop logs a transaction in that wallet, which basically says that the allocation of the funds will be a bit different, and they're going to get a bit more of my Bitcoin, I'm going to get a bit less of my Bitcoin, or whatever the initial amount deposited, which basically means that there's going to be a shared wallet with uh, two owners, each having a quantity of Bitcoin. And as time goes by, either one or the other gets more or less Bitcoin, in the sense that, for example, if the coffee shop were to give me a refund, I would give some Bitcoin back. It's basically like a continuous stream of transactions, and that stream basically ends when the channel is closed. So I can allocate zero point 0.5 Bitcoin there. Let's say hypothetically I can buy five coffees with them. I will do 5 transactions in that wallet, so nothing to do with the main Bitcoin network. And then once that's done, we confirm the sending of the whole amount of Bitcoin from one entity to the other. So
Yes.
I haven't looked. There were some numbers being thrown around, like 65,000. No, I think maybe like 65,000 transactions per second. If this were to be adopted, it's not that relevant. The point is, it would be much faster. It's a good solution, but like I said initially, it is a layer two solutions, which means you would need another external chain to use this. And although, even like Vitalik said in his podcast, it borrows some of the security from the original chain, it's not 100% the same security.
Yeah.
The good thing about the Lightning Network is that it's shared across some other networks. Like I think Litecoin can also use it, so that's good. Which means
Okay, I
that
didn't
if
know that.
yeah. Well, not this. I don't think it's the same one. It might be the same one. It might have cross-chain compatibility, but to be honest, I haven't dug that deep. But
Okay, but
this is yeah.
let's
Go
just take one moment here, just to recap it for
yeah.
listeners that might be new to this. So
Okay.
in terms of the explanation that you just gave, a simple way to look at it is our current financial system. When you go to Starbucks and buy something, right? Oftentimes you will any shop. Starbucks is just a hypothetical example here, but any shop you buy something at, oftentimes the payment doesn't clear immediately, and that's why when you look on your banking app, it has a lot of pending payments, but your balance will show that the money was taken out, so to say. But the date at which it clears is at a later point. So you have to imagine Bitcoin Lightning Network is trying to mimic this in a slightly different way. So you can't compare it, one to one, but it does allow you to sort of log a lot of payments and then clear them once the wallet is closed, like you said.
Hmm.
And this allows for more payments to be made quicker. And it's a layer two solution, meaning that it's a layer that is put on top of Bitcoin to make it work. And that's basically what that is in, really, really straightforward sort of explanation. So just to give people who don't have any previous sort of knowledge of this, a rough explanation of how that works. But
Yeah.
continue.
Uh, yeah, no, basically that was it. So this was more about me trying to read up on it and see how it works. So, like, sort of like, it's not necessarily positives or negatives. My thoughts on it are it seems like a good solution, although I haven't explored why. Well, I mean, it's kind of obvious it won't have the same security because potentially, theoretically, in that stream of data, it's probably easier to get unwanted access rather than having unwanted access on the main Bitcoin network. So that's the vulnerability. There's definitely a vulnerability. So it isn't as secure as things get moved around. But it doesn't seem bad. Like it seems like a good solution. And there's another thing. The whole reason why it's called Lightning Network is because actually, if I don't have the funds, but you have the funds, and we want to give money to the same coffee shop, apparently, if I have an open channel with you and you have an open channel with the coffee shop, it's like my transaction would go through your channel to the coffee shop. So it would be like the branches of a lightning. I guess that's the origin of the name. So meaning
Oh,
that
okay.
not every entity would have to have channels opened to every other entity because that would be crazy. That would be actually a complicated mess. Like that would make the Lightning
Right,
network itself even have even bigger overhead. But this
right.
way, this is like a programming optimization root optimization problem, which is slightly easier to handle in the way that basically, for example, the network will look at my node and see like, okay, who does Adi have a connection with? Okay, this guy. Do they have a root to that entity? And if they do, it's gonna go through them through their active channel. So that's kind of smart.
Hmm.
Okay,
I agree.
the next thing I read up on was Taproot, and honestly, Taproot was a bit more complex and a bit more complicated, but it was also super interesting. I learned a lot about it, and basically, Taproot is the precursor to Lightning Network purely from the fact that it's the way it allows for multi-signatures wallets, from what I understand, and SegWit, which is segregated witnesses, which is some other stuff. Taproot is super interesting. What it does
Yes.
basically, it encapsulates transactions to generate a transaction reference that cannot be traced to the origin and can actually be a mixture of smart contracts and other types of settlements. So basically, Taproot is, and like the end result, the end transaction is basically similar to what you would have previously in Bitcoin. So to the network, it all seems the same, although one could have super complex functionality behind it, and the other one could be just a simple settlement. So Taproot would also allow more complex uh, actions on the network and smart contracts, while also encapsulating some of those into multiple, like from multiple processes. So you won't have a transaction for a smart contract. You can probably fulfill multiple smart contracts in a single transaction and then only publish that one. So that's super good. And also it has increased anonymity, because since it's not one account in, one account out, basically this is the anonymity
Multiple.
dream of Bitcoin, because you won't know who generated what with what processes. Now, I haven't dug deep enough here also to understand why Edward Snowden said this is one of the biggest privacy concern of Bitcoin, because he
Mhm.
says there's way for people to actually make this much easier to hack rather than the
Yep.
initial algorithm provided by Satoshi for Bitcoin.
He's
That's
also a big
interesting.
he's also a big proponent of Zcash or Zcash, whatever you want to call it. So
Yeah.
anyone that wants to look into that, it's a more private sort of coin, and in many ways, to some people, it's a better alternative to Bitcoin. But yeah, that's another discussion. But yeah, check out Zcash.
Or
Recommended
Monero.
by or
I
Monero,
think
yeah, or
these two
Fyro.
are. I haven't heard about that one.
Yes, so Fyro, Zcash, and Monero. If anybody wants to check out very private coins with good fundamentals,
Yeah.
go ahead.
The last point I want to touch here on is the whole thing with Jack Dorsey and Cash App. So after our talk, I did a bit of research about that as well. And yeah, first off, I found out that Cash App only accepts Bitcoin, which was a huge surprise to me, because initially when I heard about it, I understood cryptocurrencies in general, but apparently it's just Bitcoin, which is surprising because, for example, Robinhood, PayPal, and even some other like investment, semi transaction platforms, they accept multiple currencies. For example, PayPal accepts Bitcoin, Ethereum, Litecoin, and Bitcoin Cash.
Hmm.
So from that perspective, Jack Dorsey took a very, very like resolute stance. Like he's promoting Bitcoin, and
Yes.
the interesting thing about it is he was interested in Africa way before. Well, I mean, not necessarily way before, but before he started working with Bitcoin and trying to adopt Bitcoin. So Africa presented a lot of interest to him before this, but now he's focusing this whole adoption on Africa. But like you mentioned, this won't work without Lightning Network, and even with Lightning
Right.
Network and maybe Taproot, it won't have a use case there because nobody's gonna wait there half an hour or have like a $10 transaction fee. So you need these two. Well, I think you probably need Lightning Network more than Taproot. But if you want to do some smart contracts and maybe some other stuff, some anonymity stuff as well, you need Taproot as well.
Yes.
And what's interesting, after we talk, I explored which were the top 10 most Bitcoin maximalist countries. And I have the list here, and it goes like this: Kenya, Brazil, Chile, Ecuador, Nigeria, South Africa, Argentina, Germany, Morocco, and Poland. A lot of those are in Africa.
Thank you.
So yeah, well, it's if you ask me, it's interesting. But in a close second spot, actually, one of the currencies which is closer to that is XRP. Just like I mentioned the other time, like people are looking at XRP. Like it's top three after Bitcoin and Ethereum. It's XRP. even in those African countries. So it's not bad. It's all I'm saying is, yeah, they're super popular there, and like you said, most people know about Bitcoin, but the second or third one they know about is XRP, which is purely a transactional coin. So that's interesting. So
Um, hold on,
yeah,
let me interject here though, because you keep
go.
mentioning XRP without no sort of context. XRP is a sort of mainstream solution for currency transaction, right? But
Yeah,
the problem with XRP is that they're currently being investigated by the SEC, and it's the largest investigation of any coin so far. So I would be hesitant to claim that XRP is, a coin to be investing in, especially if the founders. I think the founder tried to. I think he tried to get 1 billion out of the company, and then the people in the company sued him. So you have to imagine the kind of clusterfuck that's going on at that company. So while XRP is very fast, like you mentioned, it's very superior in many ways to Bitcoin if you compared it just based on those sort of basic things, as in speed and transaction volumes and so forth. But if you looked at the sort of list of offenses that these guys have been gathering, I wouldn't touch it with a pole. So just this caveat there.
again, nobody mentioned anything about investing in them, in one of them or
Okay.
another of them, but rather
Yeah.
using them as transactional. And
Yeah. I just
I
wanted to
think,
add that for anybody
yeah,
that
sure,
would.
but using it as transaction, I don't think there's any risk involved in actually using any of them as transaction. But XRP would be faster, cheaper, and you wouldn't have the same problems. But yeah, that was my point basically. This is what I read up on. I will agree now that my view is a bit more complex. I understand the potential of Bitcoin, which is nice, but I I read up there was some a bit of a complicated aspect regarding the adoption of Lightning Network and Taproot. Like they couldn't decide. Almost everybody was agreeing with the implementation, but they had some issues with deciding when to start using it, how to start using it, how to vote for it. So it it kind of also gave me the vibe I was telling you about regarding having not having a leader, So yeah, I still get that feeling, but probably maybe this is one of the roles actually Jack Dorsey is trying to fill. Maybe this is one of the roles. He might try to give it some scope, some direction. Yeah.
This is what I was trying to explain. So that's a good
Hmm.
segue actually. That
Yeah.
even though Bitcoin doesn't have a leader, you could say the most high profile person that sort of Bitcoin has on its side, with all of the peripherals and all of the sort of influence and track record, is Jack Dorsey. Jack Dorsey owns Twitter, which is
Yeah.
arguably the most actively used. This is not a fact. I'm just assuming that it's the most actively used social media platform, um, as well as people engage the most on there. You have all this cancel culture. I mean, a lot of things are dictated on Twitter before they sort of bleed into the mainstream. So Twitter dictates a lot of culture in a way that no other social media platform really does like that. And
Hmm.
and also Jack Dorsey is the CEO of Square, and Square is really interesting in that it's like a neobank. And I think my hello, can you still hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, okay, okay. The sound went quiet then. Um, so I was saying Square is a sort of neobank because